What other people think about you is none of your business. At a certain level, you need to get to a place in your mindset and your identity where you can trust yourself, where you can own what you want, and you can hear people, you can get feedback, you can get advice, but at some point or another, you're the final say. And you do have to walk away from even what your friends, family think, what your friends on social media think, and even what your mentors or even your teachers say. At some point or another, you've got to be the one to decide what you want, and you've got to go for it with everything you've got, and you've got to get to the place where you're like, it doesn't really matter what other people say. This is what I'm going for. I'm going to own this. I'm going to do this. According to the self-determination theory, which is one of the amazing theories in motivation, we all need to get to a place of pure intrinsic motivation, pure autonomy, pure competence, pure freedom. And that level of freedom, that level of motivation means that you've blocked out all external reference points, external noise. You're just purely autonomous in what you're doing. You decide what you want. You decide the level you're going to go to. Yes, you can use resources. You can get teachers, things like that. You can have aids and you can even have competition to some degree, but you're the one who's purely decided what you're going to do. You're doing it for the sake of the thing. You love it. You've got your motives, you've got your reasons, and it's purely self-decided. There's actually a really great quote from Naval Ravikant. One of the things he says, happiness is a purely internal game. You can't have any external validation. There is no external progress. At the end of the day, as human beings, all progress is internal. It's a one-player game. And if you're still playing on the outside, if you're still competing with other people, if you're still trying to get other people's approval, then you're actually playing a multiplayer game, and you're not actually making any progress as a human being. At some point or another, you realize happiness, success, progress is all an inside job. It's an inside game. That's why the self-determination theory is so powerful, is because at some place, you get to a point where it's just pure intrinsic motivation, pure autonomy. You choose what you want, and then you decide the price you're willing to pay. So that's one of the first levels, is what other people think about you is none of your business. The next level is ultimately deciding what you want and then not worrying about the price that's willing to be paid. You've got to pay the price. That's one of the things that Stephen R. Covey said. He said, you've got to decide what you want, and then you've got to be willing to pay whatever price is required. And there is a price. There's always a price. You've got to give up what you've got for what you want. Now, it doesn't mean you have to give up everything. It's not like you've got to go and be a monk, but you've got to be willing to pay the price. If you want to get in elite physical shape, there's a price to be paid. If you want to become a millionaire, there's a price to be paid. If you want to become a professional author, there's a price to be paid. If you want to reach a certain level of spiritual development, there's a price to be paid. Tim Grover, he's the author of Relentless. He was the coach of Kobe Bryant, of Michael Jordan. He was the health trainer of those guys. He said that once you are so committed to the outcome, then the hard work becomes irrelevant. It doesn't really matter anymore. You become really committed to whatever process is required and whatever change is required. And so that's another level you need to get to, is that you're so committed to what you want that you're willing to pay whatever price is required. Whatever price that may be, that's probably going to require you to let go of a lot of the things you're holding on to, maybe some bad habits, some bad belief patterns, your fixed mindset. Whatever it is you want, it's up at this level, you've got to give up what you're holding on to that's holding you back. You've got to give up maybe some behaviors, some attitudes, some addictions, some distractions. So the question is, what do you want? And what is the price that would need to be paid? Do you know what that price is? Do you know what it's going to require of you to become that? There's a great quote from Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn said that you should have the goal to become a millionaire, not for the $1 million, but for what it would require of you to become in order to be a millionaire. There's this power of becoming that is why you set the goals in the first place. This is, again, why it's an inside job. What is the target you're seeking, and what is it going to require of you to become to have that? Ultimately, that's the end game for everything, is what you become as a result of what you're pursuing. You pursue a goal because it allows you to become something more. And so that then invites you to think, well, what goals are most powerful and what goals are most important, because what's the end game of that? The end game is whatever you become as a result. A lot of people, they chase goals and outcomes, and the end product, which is who they become, isn't what they wanted. They're still looking for something else. And so what are you going to become by chasing this? And also, what are you going to become by paying the price? By paying the price, you will transform as a person. Let me give just a few simple examples. I remember when I decided I wanted to become a professional writer, I was nowhere near that in my skill or even my mindset. But I knew that there was a price. There was a price that had to be paid. I had to learn how to build an audience. I had to learn how to write. And so by going through the process, by paying the price, it transformed me as a person. The same is true of any endeavor. In psychology, they call it deliberate practice. When you're paying the price, which is actually learning, practicing, trying, letting go of the fixed mindset, really seeing your future self, getting help, transforming your priorities, your views of the world, and ultimately becoming who you want to be, that price will transform you. It's a beautiful price. The process is beautiful. You do want to fall in love with the process. And that's step number 3, is that you become flexible in your process. You own so much on an intrinsic motivation level that you're actually doing the thing for its sake, but also because you're so committed to what it is and what it represents. You're committed fiercely to the outcome. And as the saying goes from William Hutchinson Murray, the moment one commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of events come from the decision. Once you become fully committed to the decision, then the world becomes your aid. Then you become fiercely committed. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. All of a sudden, resources come. You start to see things you didn't see before. Once you get super committed to something, then you train your brain to see it. It's called selective attention. You train your brain to see what you're looking for. What you focus on expands. So committing fully allows you to see the world from the perspective of your commitment. And that allows you to weed everything else out. Dan Sullivan, the founder of Strategic Coach, actually says that 10x thinking is easier than 2x. It's easier to have a 10x vision of your future self than a 2x vision, 2 times bigger. Because with 2 times bigger, you don't necessarily need to change up everything you're doing. You just probably need to work harder. And working harder isn't the best way. When you 10x your vision, literally think about any metric in your life. It could be your income, it could be your time off of work, it could be your revenue, it could be your investments, whatever it is. Take whatever goal you have and 10x it. In order to actually do that, you would need to fundamentally change your process and probably change your identity. But what Dan talks about is that if you really commit to going 10x, then you have to shape a 10x filter. Your worldview becomes 10x, and you process everything through that 10x filter. Will this help me go 10x or will it not? It's very much like the English rowing team. Once they had the goal of going gold and once they committed to that, they asked themselves the question, will this make the boat go faster? That became their filter for everything they did. They went out to a meal, they were offered dessert. Their question, will it make the boat go faster? If the answer is no, then bang, you don't do it. Go out to a party, will it make the boat go faster? Nope, we're going to bed early. You need to have a filtering process for everything you do. That's part of the price you pay. And you get to a point where you love that process. It becomes an end in and of itself, even though it is a means to the end that you ultimately want. And so part of this, a beautiful thing, is that you let go of the need for outcomes in the short term. Everything you do, you just do it for the love of it. You do it for the pureness of it. You just do what you fully feel is right. Pure autonomy, no worry about what other people think. You just do it for the genuineness of it. And then you let go of the need for outcomes in the short term because you're committed to the outcome in the long term. You let go. That, in other words, you become insanely in flow with your process, insanely genuine with your process, and you've let go of the need for outcomes in the moment. Because you're committed to the outcome in the long term, you've let go. As it's been said before, you become so committed to the outcome that you become flexible in the process. And there's a lot of research on this, a lot of research on hope as an example. And people who are high hope, they're so flexible in their process. They're willing to develop many workable paths to their goal. Whereas people who are low hope, they just try the same thing over and over again. And if it doesn't work, they give up. And then they justify their reasons for not succeeding. You want to just be in so much flow, so much joy, the process of learning and letting go of temporary outcomes along the way, that you're willing to find whatever works best. You're willing to just be comfortable doing what you feel is right. And then ultimately, through the deliberate practice process, you can study your work, you can study your process. You're a true student of yourself, and you're also a true student of what you're doing, and you've fallen in love with the process. You've fallen in love with the process, yet you're committed to what you ultimately want. And once you're at that level, then you have complete freedom in what you do. You have complete freedom to try, to fail, to experiment, and you can just let it go. Which then takes me to stage 4, which is having short-term extreme sprint experiments. When you're at the high performance level, it's less about marathoning, even though the whole thing is a marathon, wherever it is you're trying to go, your future self. But in the short term, you're doing sprints and recovery, sprint recovery, a lot of high intensity deep work, and then you recover yourself. So as an example, you could give yourself a short-term 1 to 3 month experiment. Let's just say you want to, be a painter or a photographer. You give yourself an insane output goal. Maybe if you're a photographer, if you're used to maybe making 100 cool pictures a month, you shoot for like 500 pictures in a single month. You just, you make it an insane goal. You go for extreme volume, extreme output. And then after that, you then can reassess. Once you've gone through this extreme output and you've really maximized output and creativity over consumption. And that's one of the big things you'll know. If you're serious, if you're committed, You're going to scale back the consumption, and you're going to certainly scale up the quality of your consumption. The quality of your consumption, whatever you consume, is going to become higher and higher grade, and you're going to be able to block out more and more of the distractions. Scrolling through Facebook, scrolling through social media, that stuff is so non-valuable to your future self that you'll stop being able to justify that. And you'll become more of an output rather than an input machine. Your inputs will be higher quality. They'll be more purposeful. Any input that comes in will be for the purpose of nutrition, not just for entertainment. So think about it. When you eat something, and really the purpose of input anyways is for nutritional value. The reason we need to eat is to nourish ourselves and hopefully to strengthen ourselves. But because we live in such a consumer society, we input things for the sake of entertainment or for numbing ourselves, and ultimately it ends up being bad for our output. The purpose of input is to improve our output. And so if you're, as the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out, but anything you eat should be for the purpose of nutrition. And you can obviously have entertainment. It's fine to rest, recover, have entertainment, but you want to think, what is the ultimate purpose of input? Inputting information is to upgrade your brain, upgrade your thinking, upgrade your process so that you can make better decisions, so that you can see the world better. But if you're just inputting garbage food, garbage media, then you're actually making your ultimate system worse off. You're making your software system, you're making your body worse off so that your output becomes garbage. So the purpose of input is to improve your output. And your output is your thinking, it's your performance, it's your mindset, it's your words, it's how you live your life. How you live your life on the outside is based on what you're letting in on the inside. As Zig Ziglar said, your input determines your outlook determines your output. Your output is your performance. And so what is the quality of input coming in? You can know you're serious when you become output focused, when you start to organize your life for creativity, for output, for whatever work you're doing. If you're a business person, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a creative, you're doing more and more output. You're throwing more and more work out there and you're throwing it into the world, and you're training yourself to get better and better at output, better and better at performance, better and better at what you're doing. And the more output you do, the more you'll improve your process, the more feedback you'll get, the quicker you can iterate, the faster you can learn. And this is part of becoming courageous. The more committed you are, the more courageous you'll become. And creativity at its purest level, in pure intrinsic motivation, is a courageous act. It takes courage to fully trust yourself, to fully go for what you want, to fully go for what you believe. It takes extreme courage. It takes less courage to just compare yourself to others or to try to do what you think other people want you to do. That's a really low level. That's actually what Stephen Covey would call being dependent. If you're trying to do what other people want you to do, if you're still seeking social approval, if you're creating things in hopes that people will love it, obviously you want people to love it, but really you want to get to the point where you're just creating it because that's what you believe you should create. Whether it be the business, whether it be your performance at work, you're doing what you believe you should, and you're doing it the way you believe you should at the highest level, and it becomes less and less about how it's appreciated by other people. It's more about you're doing it because at the fullest level, you're doing what you believe you should. At the level you should. You set your own target. You become your own reference point. Remember, it's a one-player game, as Naval Ravikant said. Happiness, success, those things are purely internal. There is no external validation. There is no external progress. It is just an inside game. The outside is just a reflection of what's going on inside. So those are some of the keys to let you know if you're becoming hyper committed. There's one other level, and that's very connected to all the others, and that's that you become extreme approach focused. Approach focused means that you're not avoiding what you don't want. You're not overly trying to stop yourself from what you don't want. You're just approaching your target. You've clarified your future self. You've clarified your target, and you're just fully approaching it. You're no longer worried about what people think. You can then ask people for advice. You can ask for support. You can ask because you're not worried about the opinions of other people. It's like a student who really wants to know in a class. They're not afraid of asking the dumb question. They're just fully approaching. They just want knowledge. They just want skills. They just want to get there. They're not worried about what their other classmates think. They don't care what their teacher thinks. They just want to know the truth. They want to know the answer. And so when you become super approach motivated, then you're approaching your future self. You're willing to pay the price. You're outputting rather than inputting. A lot of people just input for the sake of distraction. They even gain knowledge and even read great books for the sake of avoiding the work that they should be doing. Steven Pressfield calls this resistance in his book, The War of Art, and also his book, Turning Pro. He talks about how amateurs, they feed into resistance. Resistance means you're distracting yourself from the work you should ultimately be doing. You're inputting rather than outputting. You're doing anything you can but eating the frog. And so you know that you're a pro and you know you're committed, you know you're serious when you start putting the important before the urgent. As they say in the productivity world, it's eating the frog. You put the worst first. You wake up and you start outputting. You then even train your mindset and your subconscious for more output, for higher quality output. The inventor Thomas Edison said, never go to bed without a request to your subconscious. Never go to bed without thinking about the problem you're trying to solve. Even Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, said when he goes to bed, he thinks about the problem he's trying to solve. And then he lets his brain work on it while he's asleep. Your subconscious always works while you're asleep, and it solves so many problems when it's not encumbered by your daily thought process. When you're asleep, bang, learning, memory, all those things 10x. And so if you think about your problems that you're trying to solve, if you think about your future self, if you think about your goals you're trying to accomplish, you visualize it right before bed, and then you wake up, and rather than inputting, you go straight to output. You go to your journal, you dump your thoughts. You just write for 5 to 15 minutes about your goal, about the problem you're trying to solve. You will see so many pearls of insight. You will see so many pearls of wisdom within your subconscious that you're just dumping out because you're outputting. Josh Waitzkin, the author of The Art of Learning, talks a lot about this in his interviews with Tim Ferriss, about outputting first thing in the morning and getting subconscious breakthroughs. He calls it crystallized intelligence. This is something you can get very good at. And then you can get to the point where at the end of the day, your brain just starts sparking off insights, and then you put them in your journal, you think about it, you wake up, and then you have so much creativity, so much output. And so you want to put the important before the urgent. You want to output before you start inputting. You want to eat your frog and put the important, putting your future self, putting your commitment before the busyness of the day. Schedule your appointments for the afternoon. Keep your phone on airplane mode until after you've outputted for at least 60 to 90 or 120 minutes. Eat the frog, put first things first. You'll know you're committed to your future self when it no longer requires so much resistance to just get up and start outputting. You're just outputting, you're creating, you're moving forward, you're getting feedback, and you're no longer worried about what people think. And then you have complete integrity. At the end of your day, you feel great because you've done your work first. You've faced resistance, you've done the job, you've moved forward, and you're increasingly becoming self-determined. Self-determination theory, that's where I started in the beginning. You're playing an inside game. You're committing to your own level of success. You're no longer comparing yourself to other people. You're no longer seeking external validation. You're playing your own game. It is a single-player game. You're playing a single-player game right now. Your input shapes your outlook, but also your inside game shapes what's going on outside of you. And the more confident you can get in your own self, and the more happiness you create as an inside game that you're not seeking it from external levels, you're happy because you're living your life the way you believe you want to. You've defined success for yourself. You've defined the game for yourself. You are actually living it out yourself. You no longer worry about what people think. You're just owning it. You're paying your own price. You're going through your own transformation. That is the game. My name is Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Right here you can get the next video to the Future Self series. Please like this video, subscribe. Down below you can get a link as well that will take you to my Peak State Checklist. Peak State Checklist has been downloaded over 800,000 times. Click the link, you can get that. It'll show you how to get into a peak state first thing in the morning. Have an absolutely amazing day. See ya.